We know that our Learn Local providers play a very vital role in changing the lives of many people across our communities across the state. We also know that you as providers take great pride in supporting our learners to think positively and believe in themselves and believe they can take another step and achieve, as well as having really positive futures in their own lives with their families and immediate communities. And we know that our role is primarily known to be engagement, re-engagement, building confidence and that sense of self. But when we've gone across and consulted as part of the strategy development, but when we've also, when in the visits, I think I'm up to now provider number 64, it was really evident that our providers do a lot more than that. They actually do prepare people with a very positive learning experience and that confidence, but they also prepare them to go into employment or onto study. And I'm not sure that really beyond our own sector that's widely recognised, and I'll come back to that. But the other thing is that we don't want to lose the fact that our role is grounded in the fact of making people be able to participate and have a full and active life. So the strategy was developed on very extensive consultation. How many of you attended any of the consultation sessions? None? Some? Great. But we also had to look at what is actually happening in Victoria in a policy setting. What are the things that our Minister wants to achieve? As the board reports directly to the Minister for Training and Skills and Higher Education, what's the broader policy direction at a national level? What is good practice saying, not only in our state but across Australia, and what's good practice saying in research across the world? And particularly the European Commission has some fantastic examples where countries and communities have done some great things working with disadvantaged learners, and any other research that was relevant. But we also had to listen and respond to what are the trends that are happening policy-wise, the fact that Learn Locals are evolving into other roles, but also listen to the challenges. So what are the things over the 6-year journey that together we've got to try to address? And we couldn't ignore the fact that the Minister is holding the board to account in the realisation of her vision. What's great is, I don't know if you've heard the Minister speak about the sector, she understands it really well, she's incredibly passionate about it, and as she says, she wants to bring it out from behind the kitchen door. That's the terminology. I heard her say it at Warrnambool last Friday. But this is the first time that a Minister in 2 decades since Lynn Kosky has come out and said, this is the adult community education sector and it's one of 3 sectors in the state of Victoria. And I think that is a very exciting thing and something that the strategy springboards from. So therefore, it was our job to work based on the consultation and the research and the policy context to develop this blueprint. How are we going to get there over the next 6 years? But not losing sight of the fact that every individual, adult individual in Victoria has a right to access education and training, despite whatever their background and circumstance, and they have a right to have the development of those core skills. That's very important. So here's the relationship between the 4. So you've got the strategic context where the Minister has come out with a 6-year vision. How many of you, it's great bedtime reading, how many of you have read it? So very set goals and aspirations. And one could be a little daunted, but instead I think we should be, very excited by it. Then what she has done is, all right, that's 6 years, what do I want the board to lead and work with the sector on in year 1? So we'll get a statement of expectations from the Minister. So there's that relationship. Over here, the board's developed its strategy. We had our strategy ready really in October based on our consultation and work with the sector and with the department, but we had to wait for the statement, and you'll see that in the strategy we've cross-referenced the link for you. And then what we are going to do for our people and our sector is each year we will publish the focus of our work for that particular year. So we're about to publish the 2020, and we've had to wait because the Minister has just given us the statement of expectations, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So this is just showing you the work that's been done. This is the critical time. So we've been to each regional council, the board members are going out and talking to forums. We're also going to talk to other key stakeholders, other departments, DHHS, Department of Justice. We also need to talk to the Skills Commissioner and all the industry advisory groups. We need to talk to our sector peaks because we need to get them on board and join with us as we take this journey. That's the level of consultation. I just need to assure you that we have done broad consultation, broad research, and hopefully you'll feel ownership, as the board does, with the strategy. So here's our vision, which I said to you, that the ACFE sector develops the core skills in Victorians so that they are prepared and what they need for study, work and life. So it's not taking away what's precious, but it's actually starting, for the sector, we help people, but it's actually putting first and at the forefront the other things that many of you do, preparing people for work and for study. Now this is going to be quite a challenge, but we're up for it and hope you are too. When I undertook the Future for Adult Learning project for the state government, the idea was to give our sector a flagship. And so, given what the statement has said, and the fact that in your delivery, what are the underpinning skills? You know that you are often teaching people basic language, literacy, numeracy, employability, and now even more so digital skills. So the board have said that this sector, the board is going to lead with the sector. We are going to be the leaders in literacy, numeracy, English language, employability and digital skills for adults across Victoria. So what does that mean? TAFE institutes also do this training. Well, we'll work together, but we own the CGA, so what should that look like going forward? What does it mean in terms of the products that we have in terms of building people's capacity, our learners, but also our practitioners? So what we want to do is make sure that we have the right products that will build that and position us. We also want to lead research. As I said, look at curriculum development, but also look at what does that mean in leading professional development in these areas. So this is just to make the point that sometimes I think the perception about our sector is that we are only focused on social inclusion. That's a very critical role for us, but it's not the only role. And if you want to be part of having a key role in education, and you want to be smart about influencing policy, the issue is that though we're positioning our learners, by positioning our learners for study, work and life, we actually have more than just a social impact. We actually have an economic impact as well. And if you look at some of our student survey results, many of our students successfully go on to study, successfully go on to employment. And in fact, those who go on to accredited study, if they've undertaken a pre-accredited course, they are very, very successful. Who knows about that and how do we quantify it? That's what we actually want to illustrate, and that's some of the work that we do. And I think here, environmental, but really the fact we want to show that we have a role in sustainable communities going forward. Working with business, working with industry and working with communities. Now, these are the principles and these that underpin the strategy. You'll also see them reflected in the Ministerial Statement, and they have basically come from the sector. At the end of the day, why do we exist? Well, we have to be learner focused. We probably interact and support and teach some of the most disadvantaged learners in the state. But people who are looking for a new opportunity, that sense of that they can achieve, well, at the end of the day, what is critical is to be learner focused. The second thing is that what underpins our sector and what underpins the strategy is our role is to provide delivery and have a pre-accredited delivery across the state that is accessible, equitable and inclusive, and where there is a need for provision, it is provided. That it's place-based, notice that we haven't said community-based. Place-based, predominantly in our communities, but it could mean more than that. It could be place-based in the sense that we deliver in industry in our communities. And also place-based, aligning with the broad dialogue that is happening across state government in relation to place-based initiatives. Social and economic impact I've already talked about, but that also is highlighting that we have a role to play with getting people into employment and working with industry as well. Needs-based, the great thing about pre-accredited is it's responsive, needs-based learning to what those learners need in order to achieve their goals. Aligned, collaborative and interconnected. Now you'd read this in the Ministerial Statement. The Minister expects to have a post-secondary system where no one falls through the cracks. And that's an underpinning principle of the strategy. And the last is transparency, and that refers more to the board. So that the sector can expect transparent, ethical, values-based leadership from the board, as the board are the stewards of the sector. So here are the 4 roles that underpin the strategy. The first role is, if you're involved in education and training, your engagement and participation. Quadrant 1 reflects what we're known for. That engagement, re-engagement in a supportive, flexible, learner-focused, responsive environment, and we are giving people the capacity to develop their core skills to springboard. So that's what we're known for. But we want to be known for the work and recognised for the work that many of you are doing. So Quadrant 2 is about supporting successful attainment in accredited training. Many of our Learn Local providers prepare learners to go on to study. So we've got a pathways into role. But we also, and John is leading a project where we're working as 2 pilots, where often when our learners get into accredited training, and they were taking free TAFE, for example, which the project is focusing on, our learners sometimes feel a little overwhelmed, and though a TAFE institute might have support, we're saying there's a role for those who are most disadvantaged in order to be successful, to be supported. So we are undertaking some scaffolding pre-accredited, going alongside where it's contextualised. And the great thing about pre-accredited is we can work with our TAFE partners who have got the technical knowledge, and the value of pre-accredited is that you can actually make that support totally geared to that particular program and what the learners need. And eventually, in this quadrant, what we would like is we do a wonderful job, we support them through the learning with our partners, or if you're a registered training organisation, but they finish, they might do a Cert 3 in individual support, but they don't get a job straight away. What happens to our type of learner? They often lose their momentum and we're back at square one. So we think if we can work with skills and job centres, that we could keep up their employability using pre-accredited programs. This is, remember, a 6-year horizon. But at the moment we're already doing those first 2 roles, contextualised preparation into study, and now we're doing some pilots supporting them. The third is that we have a role of engaging and participation past the first role directly into employment. I think roughly about 42% of people often go straight into employment. We've got a responsibility to make sure that in the learning that we provide, they have those core skills, and in particular those digital skills, so that they can successfully participate in the workplace, but also sustain their employment. And the last role, Quadrant 4, I don't think anyone in the sector is doing this well, so the board have put up our hands and said, we think we can do this. You have many people who are currently in the workforce who don't have very high levels of those core skills. I'm not just talking about workplaces that are transitioning, but because workplaces are changing rapidly, they're becoming more digital, there's innovation in practice. Many of the learners are vulnerable because they don't have those core skills to be able to adapt. So we're saying there is a role for our Learn Locals in that provision. So they're 4 key roles. So keep that in mind. And so they're the 4 roles that we want to play. I'll just make the point about the 4 roles. We do not expect every provider to play those 4 roles. If you're small, you might just do quadrant 1. But you might work together and provide a place-based response to those learners or businesses or communities together, or you might do it with partners. But we definitely wanted to highlight those 4 roles because many of our providers across the state are doing them, and we want to leverage, if we want to take our rightful place as one of 3 sectors in the state system, we need to be recognised for the work that many of us are already doing. So there are 4 key strategic directions. One about learners. We've already talked about the fact that we need to make sure that we're building those core skills, that we are successfully engaging and re-engaging adult learners, and that we continue to provide the supportive and great learning environments that you do. That's not going anywhere. That's our core and our foundation work. But we also want to make sure that we use those core skills of going on in every local government area, which is what the Minister would like us to do. And we need to make sure that we are providing access and opportunity to every adult learner once we get them to engage and re-engage, irrespective of their background, their personal circumstance or their location. So there's a big focus on learners. The next is on partners. So remember the principles, so the strategic directions are aligned to the principles. We have to develop and strengthen partnerships between our Learn Local providers, as well as, because in some areas we've got providers that only have 2 people who are working there. Wouldn't it be great if we could have a model that actually supports them in a number of ways? We also have to strengthen partnerships between Learn Locals and TAFE institutes, and that's a major focus of the work that we've been doing this year. The Minister believes, and I have no doubt it will happen, that people can undertake pre-accredited training, perhaps go through a pathway and aim for university, because obviously universities are in her portfolio, and any other parts of the post-compulsory secondary system. The other thing that we have to do, so this year we've really focused more on the TAFE partnerships, but as time goes on, we need to develop stronger relationships with industry and business in our communities. And the other final point in this strategic direction is when I've gone out to talk to providers, our facilitators are trying to be everything to everyone. We want to strengthen the relationship so that arrangements for non-educational support in community-based learning is strengthened. Practitioners should teach, and then the other aspect, for example, DHS with health and wellbeing and any other service agencies, so we create the best learning environment and supportive environment for our learners. So that's a journey, but we really believe that that's a major focus for us. And then the other thing is we want to be a priority provider of solutions in our place-based areas. But do industry think of us as that way? But there are a number of examples. Here in Gippsland, where industry said if I'd only known what pre-accredited could bring me as an employer in building people's skills, I'll worry about the technical skills, but the fact that you can work with us and develop a bespoke program. So by the end of 6 years, we don't want to be an afterthought or not thought of at all. We want to be at the forefront of that decision making for employers. Obviously, you can't go on this journey without investing in your people. So the third strategic direction focuses on investing in professional development, but probably with a change in emphasis. So what we want is to actually develop a professional development vision and a framework that recognises the skills of our people and gives some credentialing, like an ACFE credentialing, and provides opportunities for small, sharp, effective, accessible PD that you'll build up a portfolio. And then the other part is that we also can't implement the strategy nor the statement if we don't have the right product and the right tools. So one of our key projects that we've commenced is what does pre-accredited need to look like going forward in order to achieve this strategy? So we want to maintain its flexibility and responsiveness, But things that we're exploring that came through the consultation, should there be core electives, should there be levels, we'll be coming back and talking with you, so that it also gives our students, if they're progressing, something that recognises what they've learnt and what they can take out to a future employer or something like that. So that investment to enable us to work smarter will also investigate provision and models. So at the end of the day, we are actually fulfilling what the Minister wants us to do as the third sector in the state. And the other strategic direction is in relation to the board. So the board has been charged by the Minister to meet the expectations and the outcomes set out in that statement over the next 6 years. What I'm saying to you is we're up for the challenge, but we can't do it alone. So I sort of see it a bit like a triage. The board reports to the Minister. We're excited by this because we really believe in the sector and what role it can play in this state. But we need our providers and our peaks to be united and work with us. It's not saying there aren't challenges, but coming with us on the journey and helping us do some of this work. And we also need the department, because we're a board and they're our management team, and we need them to do quality work done in a timely way that is strategic and helps us on the journey. So I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation you're excited and you want to get on the bus with us. So this is to me the strategy in a nutshell. The learner at the centre. We're going to provide them with the skills for study, work and life, depending on what their goals and aspirations are and depending on where their starting point is. The right-hand column is the learning model. We'll continue to provide flexibility, tailored and responsive curriculum. But the other thing that we want to build into our pre-accredited delivery, and I saw it brought up as an issue even when I went overseas with the Minister in November, that a lot of disadvantaged people don't have the capacity to learn. They don't know how to learn. And so that is something that we want to make sure that we give our students, not only for the pre-accredited study that they're doing, but if they go on to work, well, they've still got to be able to adapt and learn. So that's something that we're very committed to, and the other investment is in a capable workforce. Down here, it's about settings. We will remain to be the adult community education sector, place-based in the community and contextualised in the workplace. Over here, strong partnerships. I think the sector has got to understand it can do some things on its own, but we have to partner to achieve other things. And that will involve mutual respect by all partners. So with business, with TAFEs, universities, other education providers, with government. For example, Justice, they like pre-accredited, don't they, the Department of Justice for people on community orders. We're saying that's great. But if you like it that much, you'll need to think about possibly resourcing it. So it's sort of that influencing role, which is our role on behalf of the sector. And then finally, the service agencies supporting us so that we provide the best support for our learners as they engage and go on to study. So this is the focus for 2020. So the board has decided, are we clear that we're reaching the learners who need it most? So one of the key things for our planning day next month is for us to understand our provision. Type of learner, type of program, locations. So just as a starting point, do we fully understand? Because we need to make sure, according to legislative requirements, that we are reaching the learners who are in our remit and who need it most. We're also starting on building provision capability, that in other words with our people, in literacy and numeracy, language, digital skills and employability. We're also starting our work on enhancing the teaching quality through a framework of skills recognition, recognising where people are already at, but then what other professional development do we need to support our people as we take this journey over the next 6 years. Fostering partnerships in TAFE universities and employers, and we predominantly started with TAFEs. And so perhaps in the break you might like to talk to John about some of the great projects and models that are being developed, and there's a lot of successful partnerships that are benefiting learners across the state. At the end of the day, if we're going to have these 4 roles, we've got to make sure people understand what Learn Locals do, what our brand stands for, and the impact. The dilemma for us now is, do we go out hard and do that now when we've got a finite budget? But we're starting to build that understanding. And I think we've already done it fairly well over the last year, because it's the first time that all the hours have been allocated across the state. So people in the community, stakeholders, are starting to understand the role. And the final thing is to build the capacity of the board in order for it to fulfil what the minister expects of it, because we're accountable to the minister. Then the last is the minister's statement. Remember that diagram, 1 year focus? So the minister gave the board her statement of expectations for 2020 at its board meeting the Thursday before last. Most of them align here, but a couple of extra things. I think the first 2 years of the strategy are going to be foundation. We know the current economic situation, now exacerbated by what's happening. So it's really important that the board's leadership is that we're making the most impact and putting in the right foundations for us to springboard going forward and achieve this vision over the next 6 years. So obviously one of the challenges is that we actually need to think, well, what else might we need? So the minister in her statement has said that we are to start to build an evidence-based business case to grow provision. Because this is about a vision and growth and elevating the sector. She also wants us to look at innovative delivery models that support all communities across the state. So they're probably the 2 different things. We'll put that out, we'll put this together now that we've got the statement, and it will go up on the website. But I think, we feel very strongly that the right foundations that we'd already started with our project work have been put in place. We work very closely with the Minister's office, so nothing in the statement was a surprise. And that's it. So 6 years, a good springboard from which to, start this work. And I hope that you're excited, and I hope that you're going to join.